Brandon Tilsch.
And I'm Mia DeChana.
Today, we have some interesting news regarding the current gold rush that has swept California this year.
That's right. As you all know, the discovery of gold nuggets in the Sacramento Valley in early 1848 sparked the California gold rush.
I remember when James Marshall first discovered it, Mia. He said, "It made my heart thump, for I was certain it was gold." How perfect is that?
Anyways, a final census has been reported to us. Because of this significant gold rush, California's population has rapidly increased to 100,000 people compared to pre-1848 census of only 1,000.
And those numbers are bound to continue increasing. People are even calling California the Golden State now. The future is bright, folks.
And now we go to our field reporter, Brandon Tilsch, who is outside of the Senate meeting house.
This is Brandon Tilsch, reporting to you live. As you can see in front of me, we are in front of the meeting house where the discussions of the Compromise of 1850 is taking place. Many men of the Senate are pouring in to discuss this, including Senator Henry Clay. Speaking of Mr. Clay, here he is now. Mr. Clay, may we stop you for only a moment to ask you a few questions about the Compromise of 1850 and your work with it?
It must be quick. The meeting will begin very soon.
Of course. Can you tell us a little bit about the Compromise?
The Compromise is a way to try and give the North and South each what they want as a way to try and prevent a war from happening between the two sides.
One of the things you are known for is being a compromiser, and have even known a nickname for it. So, as the Great Compromiser, what have you done to help build the compromise?
Instead of just one single compromise, I have proposed a series of compromises as an attempt to try and satisfy the two sides. If all goes well, I feel that the compromises will do just that.
We understand that it can get very intense in the meeting house, and it can feel like there's no one in the room that is agreeing with you. Have you run into a point where you have felt like that?
No, I have been able to trust that Senator Webster and Senator Douglas will agree with me. Will there ever be a point where they might disagree with me? Only time will tell.
Thank you for your time, Senator Clay. We wish you all the best from JNN News.
Thank you.
Just coming in. Breaking news.
We have just received word that the Compromise of 1850 has been finalized by President Millard Fillmore.
The compromise is to give concessions to both the North and the South. For the North, the compromise will admit California as a free state. The disputed territory between Texas and New Mexico will go to New Mexico, and the slave trade will end in the District of Columbia.
For the South, however, a stricter fugitive slave law will go into effect. Texas will receive $10 million from the federal government as a result of New Mexico gaining the disputed territory, and the rest of Mexican succession land will be formed into the Utah and New Mexico territory.
Due to popular sovereignty, there will not be any restriction on slavery in the Utah and New Mexico territories. Again, there will not be any restriction on slavery in Utah and New Mexico.
Even though this is meant to be a compromise, I suspect that the stricter fugitive slave law will cause anger and frustration from the Northerners, and they will try to do more to help the slaves escape.
I agree. We will only have to wait and see what the compromise brings. We now go to Mia DeChana, who is currently with Senator John C. Calhoun, who is unfortunately, seemingly, on his deathbed.
Thanks, Brandon. Now we are here with the legendary Senator Calhoun.
Oh, you're the interviewer, yes?
Yeah. We are here with the legendary Senator Calhoun as he lies in his bed, clearly very sick, with a deadly illness of tuberculosis, after he addressed the Senate earlier today. Now, because of his illness, it would be very difficult and painful for him to speak, and during the session of Senate, his speech had to be delivered by James Mason, a senator from Virginia. I'm sure you know him. Now, Mr. Calhoun, why don't you tell us a bit about this speech you wrote?
Yes. I wrote that speech essentially in response to Henry Clay's so-called Compromise of 1850. If that abomination were passed, Congress would become unbalanced, even if only for a short period of time. The North would have more votes, and if the president approved, they could pass anything they wanted. In my speech, I describe how horribly wrong the passing of this compromise could go, and the advantages of calling for secession. The only way to preserve the Union would be an immediate stop to anti-slavery agitation and a constitutional amendment.
Yes, we know all about this new compromise going through the Senate. From what we understand, it purposes quite a lot. Now, wouldn't this compromise be almost entirely in favor of the South, aside from California being a free state?
Yes, it would, but we would be handing the North an extreme amount of power, especially if they are able to vote a president of theirs into office. They could make almost any law against the South they wished. Then, considering if we were to secede, because of the added cause of those new laws, this compromise would have been for nothing.
Wow, you have such an advanced thought on all these political topics. I hear they might make a sort of hall of fame for such influential Congress members. If so, I believe you will easily be inducted.
Yes, I'm just doing what I must to protect the South and my home.
Well, we will leave you to rest now. We hope that you will be able to stay with us and advise us for longer. But in the event that you do pass, I hope it will be painless. And if you need my help for anything, just let me know, and I will do my best. You were a great senator and will always be remembered as a great congressman. Mr. Calhoun. Mr. Calhoun. He lived a good life.
We now go to me with Daniel Webster. Good evening, Mr. Webster.
Good evening, it is indeed.
I have a few questions for you. Is that okay?
Why, of course it is. What might you have in mind?
So, Mr. Webster, the years are 1849 and 1850. When you think of these years, what do you remember?
Well, at that time, I was serving as a Whig candidate in the Senate. I actually started serving for my second time, since I think it was March 4th in 1845. My memory hasn't been that great lately. I apologize.
Oh, you're good, sir.
I actually was in the Senate until July 2nd in 1850, and before then, I had another term in the Senate as well, from 1827 to 1841.
Very cool.
What can I say? I'm a cool man.
Mr. Webster, is there anything in your second term in the Senate that you really enjoyed participating in?
Well, I did play a role in the Compromise of 1850. On March 7th of that year, I delivered a great speech about my stance on slavery issue at the time. After being inspired by Calhoun's speech on the subject, I explained about how slavery could not be completely eradicated. However, I did feel that the issue could be fixed if new territories were not made into slave states. Those citizens must abide by the fugitive slave law, including sending runaway slaves back to their owners.
Did you face any conflicts with others about your stance on the issue?
I did face some disapproval from the northern abolitionists, though I received a significant amount of praise from those in the middle. And sure, I did lose the positions of many of my colleagues in the North, but the politics, not everyone will agree on the solutions to a problem. I know Calhoun didn't approve of the compromise, though I stood behind Clay's perspective. He was a good friend of mine, who happened to have a similar perspective on the subject.
When was the compromise set into place?
The compromise wasn't actually set into place until September of 1850. So it was about 7-month gap between the proposition and when it actually was set in place.
Incredible.
You're right, it is. Though the compromise did fail to make a permanent solution to slavery.
At least a solution was attempted, though.
Yes, sir, you are indeed correct.
Thank you very much, Mr. Webster, for partaking in this interview. Everyone at JNN Studios would like to thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And that's all, folks.
See you next time on JNN.
Sponsored by Lay's.
We now go to our field reporter, Brandon Tilch, who is outside of the Senate meeting house. Do it. So we have to keep that.
Put her in the room.
Come here, baby. Come here.
Can get very intense in the meeting house, and it can feel like no one in that room is agreeing with you. Have you run into a point where you feel like that?
Not at all.
Oh, dang it, there's two of them!
Keep going, keep going. Go. Thanks, Brandon. We're here with very sick with a deadly illness, such as tuberculosis, after he addressed the Senate earlier today. Now, because of his illness, it will be very... What is that going on? We will leave you to rest now. We all hope you will be able to stay with us and advise us for longer. But in the event that you do pass, we hope it will be painful.
You wrote this.
I didn't write
No,
this
I
one.
wrote this.
And that's the tea, sis.